John Perkins, you have an interesting theory about what happened in Honduras, the coup that just took place there. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's a theory. I think it's. I was in Panama at the time that the coup took place, and the democratically elected president Zelaya had called for a new constitution to replace the old one that was really set up by the oligarchy in favor of the very, very, very wealthy and the international companies. He also called for a 60% increase in the bottom wage rate, which had a huge impact on Dole and Chiquita, two of the biggest employers in that company. They, along with a number of companies that have sweatshops in Honduras, strongly objected, very much the same way that they had objected to Aristide in Haiti when he did something similar, and called in the military. The general in charge of the military was a graduate of our School of the Americas, this school that's famous for creating dictators, and they overthrew Zelaya. It was a classic CIA-sponsored type of coup, very similar to what United Fruit had done in Guatemala in the early 50s, and of course United Fruit became Chiquita. So you had this, this strong relationship, and got rid of this democratically elected president because he was drawing a line in the sand. We'd seen 10 countries in Latin America bring in new presidents who were instituting very significant reforms in favor of the people, in favor of using local resources to help the people pull themselves up by the bootstraps, and I think the corporatocracy decided to draw a line in the sand in Honduras.
Iran and the swirling clouds.
I think Iran today, Iran is this example of where we went in and overthrew a democratically elected president, Mossadegh, in the early 50s, and we've seen terrible blowback from that ever since. It's, not only in Iran, but it impacted the whole Middle East. If we'd supported that president who simply wanted to use more of his oil money, his country's oil money, to help the poor people, we strongly objected. We overthrew him in a coup, and replaced him with a Shah. So we've seen the blowback that comes out of that. And this has led to this situation that we're in today. And the swirling clouds, to me, are the big corporations. So in the past, you had roughly 200 countries on the planet, of which a few had a lot of power: the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, the United States. But today, the geopolitics might better be envisioned as the same roughly 200 countries, but these huge swirling clouds that are the big corporations. And they are really calling the shots all over the planet. They know no national boundaries. They don't listen to any specific set of laws. They strike deals with the Chinese and the Taiwanese and the Tibetans and the Israelis and the Arab nations. Whoever has the markets or the resources, they cut deals with, and as we've seen in our most recent election here in the United States, we bring in a president who's very diametrically different from the former president, and yet the corporations are still calling the shots, which takes us back, Amy, to the fact that we, the people, must create the change. This has always been the case, and this is a clarion call for us at this point now in history that we must get out there. We've got to get behind Obama and all the other politicians. We've got to force the corporations to change their goal, get away from this goal of maximizing profits regardless of social and environmental costs, and instead say, yeah, it's okay, make profits, but only within the context of creating a sustainable, just, and peaceful world. Only within the context of creating a world that my grandson will want to inherit, and that means every child on the planet will want to inherit it. Because I think it's really important that we understand today we cannot have homeland security unless we understand that the whole planet is our homeland. Our homeland is no longer defined by the Rio Grande and the Canadian border. We are one human species living on a very fragile planet.
What is the burden of the melting glaciers?
The melting, I was in Tibet a couple of years ago, and I stood there with these nomads and looked at this glacier that had been down at the road a decade or so before, and now it's way back a mile away. And these glaciers up in the Himalayas feed the 5 largest rivers in the world. They provide water to China and to India. And as these glaciers melt, the water's drying up. The glaciers are melting because of global warming, because of us. And what we have to understand is the huge consequences. If these 5 rivers no longer can feed water to the Chinese and the Indians, these people are going to die of thirst. And before they die of thirst, they'll become very rebellious. We have to understand that one of the root causes of terrorism, I don't even like the word terrorism because I don't think it's really an ism. It's a whole bunch of diverse groups all over the world. But in practically every case, it results from starvation, from desperation. I've met a lot of terrorists. I've interviewed them for books. I've never met one who wanted to be a terrorist. These are farmers who've been driven off their farmlands by oil companies or hydroelectric projects, or they're fishermen like the Somali pirates who can no longer make a living fishing because their waters have been fished dry or destroyed by nuclear waste from U.S. military vessels. I have not met anyone who wanted to be a terrorist. They're desperate people. If we want to get rid of terrorism, we must get rid of the root causes, that cancer that is destroying our whole system.